The role of pilgrimage in the Crusader movement. Introduction. Define pilgrimage and its spiritual significance in medieval Christianity. Overview of the Crusades as a blend of pilgrimage and warfare. Purpose of the essay. To analyze how pilgrimage shaped the motivations, organization, and outcomes of the Crusader movement. Chapter 1. Pilgrimage in Medieval Christianity. 1.1 Origins and Spiritual Meaning. Biblical roots of pilgrimage, e.g., Exodus, Jesus' journey to Jerusalem. Pilgrimage as penance and a way to seek divine forgiveness. 1.2 Popular pilgrimage destinations. Jerusalem as the ultimate goal for Christian pilgrims. Other sacred sites. Rome, Santiago de Compostela. 1.3 Challenges of pilgrimage. The arduous journey. Distance, dangers, and costs. The spiritual benefits. Remission of sins, fulfilling vows. Chapter 2 Pilgrimage and the Rise of the Crusades. 2.1 The context of the First Crusade. The capture of Jerusalem by Muslim forces. Pope Urban II's call at the Council of Clermont, 1095. Framing the Crusade as an armed pilgrimage with spiritual rewards. 2.2 The concept of armed pilgrimage. Theologically reconciling violence with Christian ideals. Crusader vows. Similarities to traditional pilgrimage vows. Indulgences and the promise of eternal salvation. Chapter 3 Motivations for joining the Crusades. 3.1 Spiritual motivations. Desire to atone for sins. Fulfilling the pilgrimage obligation. Liberation of the Holy Land as a sacred duty. 3.2 Social and political motivations. The role of feudal obligations and knightly honor. Opportunities for land, wealth, and status. 3.3 Personal and familial reasons. Legacy building for noble families. Religious devotion within families. Chapter 4. The journey as pilgrimage. 4.1 Pilgrimage practices during the Crusades. Rituals of departure. Blessings and the taking of vows. Wearing the cross as a symbol of commitment. Spiritual practices during the journey. 4.2 Hardships along the way. Harsh travel conditions. Hunger, disease, and weather. Conflicts with local populations en route. The role of religious faith in overcoming adversity. Chapter 5. The Holy Land as the destination. 5.1 The sacred geography of Jerusalem. Religious significance of Jerusalem to Christians. Key sites. The Church of the Holy Sepulchre, Mount of Olives. 5.2 The symbolism of reclaiming the Holy Land. Jerusalem as the center of Christendom. The psychological and spiritual impact of its capture by Muslims. 5.3 Pilgrimage and the Crusader states. Establishment of the Kingdom of Jerusalem. Pilgrimage routes and the support of Christian travelers. Chapter 6 Pilgrimage and the justification of violence. 6.1 Shifting theology. From peace to war. The concept of Militia Christi, Army of Christ. The sanctification of violence in defense of Christianity. 6.2 Crusading as a new form of pilgrimage. Distinguishing crusading from traditional pilgrimage. The moral and spiritual rewards promised by the Church. 6.3 Critics and challenges. Opposition from theologians questioning the morality of crusading. The spiritual consequences of bloodshed. Chapter 7 The legacy of pilgrimage in the Crusades. 7.1 Cultural and social impact. Pilgrimage as a unifying force in medieval Europe. The Crusades' influence on later pilgrimages and religious movements. 7.2 Evolution of pilgrimage practices. The transformation of pilgrimage routes post-Crusades. Integration of pilgrimage into political and military agendas. 7.3 The enduring symbolism. Modern interpretations of the Crusades. Pilgrimage as a model for religious commitment. Conclusion. Recap of pilgrimage's role in shaping the Crusader movement. Reflection on the fusion of spirituality and warfare. The dual legacy. Pilgrimage as both a unifying and divisive force in history. The role of pilgrimage in the Crusader movement. Introduction. Pilgrimage, a fundamental aspect of medieval Christian devotion, was deeply intertwined with the Crusader movement. At its core, pilgrimage represented a journey of faith, penance, and spiritual renewal. By traveling to holy sites, Christians sought to deepen their connection with God, atone for their sins, and fulfill religious obligations. This practice was co-opted by the Crusades, transforming what was traditionally a peaceful act into an armed expedition. The Crusades, initiated in the late 11th century, were framed as sacred journeys to reclaim the Holy Land, particularly Jerusalem, from Muslim control. This essay explores the multifaceted role of pilgrimage within the Crusader movement, examining its religious, cultural, and political dimensions. By analyzing how pilgrimage shaped the motivations, organization, and outcomes of the Crusades, we gain a deeper understanding of how this practice influenced medieval society and the legacy it left behind. Chapter 1: Pilgrimage in Medieval Christianity. 1.1 Origins and Spiritual Meaning. Pilgrimage has ancient roots in both biblical and early Christian traditions. In the Old Testament, the journey of the Israelites from Egypt to the Promised Land is often seen as the archetype of pilgrimage. Similarly, the New Testament describes Jesus' travels to Jerusalem, particularly during key moments of his ministry. These journeys laid the foundation for pilgrimage as a spiritual practice in Christianity. By the Middle Ages, pilgrimage had become a deeply ingrained part of Christian life. It was seen as a way to draw closer to God, fulfill religious vows, and seek penance for sins. Medieval Christians believed that visiting sacred sites offered spiritual rewards, including indulgences that could reduce time spent in purgatory. The physical hardship of the journey itself was considered a form of penance, with the pilgrim's suffering viewed as an offering to God. 1.2 Popular pilgrimage destinations. While Jerusalem was the ultimate destination for Christian pilgrims, other sites also held great significance. Rome, home to the tombs of Saints Peter and Paul, was a major pilgrimage center. Santiago de Compostela in Spain attracted pilgrims to the shrine of St. James. These destinations were not only spiritual centers but also hubs of economic and cultural exchange, drawing pilgrims from across Europe. 1.3 Challenges of pilgrimage. Pilgrimage was fraught with challenges, both physical and financial. The journey was long and arduous, often taking months or even years. Pilgrims faced dangers from bandits, disease, and harsh weather conditions. Despite these difficulties, the promise of spiritual rewards motivated countless individuals to embark on these journeys, underscoring the centrality of faith in medieval life. Chapter 2: Pilgrimage and the Rise of the Crusades. 2.1 The context of the First Crusade. By the late 11th century, the political and religious landscape of the Eastern Mediterranean had changed dramatically. The Seljuk Turks had captured Jerusalem in 1071, disrupting Christian access to the city and its holy sites. This development alarmed the Byzantine Empire, which sought help from the West to counter the Muslim threat. In 1095, Pope Urban II issued a call to arms at the Council of Clermont, urging Christians to take up the cross and reclaim the Holy Land. Urban framed the crusade as a pilgrimage with a unique twist. It was an armed expedition aimed at liberating sacred sites. The Pope promised a plenary indulgence to all who participated, linking the spiritual benefits of traditional pilgrimage with the military goals of the crusade. 2.2 The concept of armed pilgrimage. The First Crusade introduced a new paradigm, the armed pilgrimage. Unlike traditional pilgrims, who traveled unarmed and sought peace, Crusaders combined their spiritual journey with military objectives. This fusion of faith and violence was justified through theological arguments that portrayed the Crusades as a defensive war to protect Christendom. Participants were referred to as pilgrims of Christ, emphasizing the spiritual nature of their mission. Chapter 3: Motivations for joining the Crusades. 3.1 Spiritual motivations. For many, the primary motivation for joining the Crusades was spiritual. Crusaders believed they were fulfilling God's will by reclaiming the Holy Land. The promise of indulgences provided additional incentive, offering a path to salvation. The act of taking up the cross and embarking on the journey was seen as a profound expression of faith. 3.2 Social and political motivations. While spirituality was a driving force, other factors also played a role. The Crusades offered opportunities for social mobility, especially for younger sons of noble families who lacked inheritance. The prospect of acquiring land, wealth, and prestige in the newly established Crusader states was a powerful draw. Feudal obligations and loyalty to lords also motivated knights and soldiers to join the campaign. 3.3 Personal and familial reasons. Crusading was often a family affair, with entire households contributing to the cause. Noble families saw the Crusades as an opportunity to enhance their reputation and secure their place in history. Personal devotion to the faith and the desire to protect Christian holy sites also inspired individuals to take part. Chapter 4. The Journey as Pilgrimage. 4.1 Pilgrimage practices during the Crusades. Crusaders adopted many of the rituals associated with traditional pilgrimage. Before departing, they took vows and received blessings from the church. The act of wearing a cross, typically sewn onto their clothing, signified their commitment to the cause. Along the journey, they engaged in prayer, fasting, and other acts of devotion, reinforcing the spiritual dimension of their mission. 4.2 Hardships along the way. The journey to the Holy Land was fraught with challenges. Crusaders faced harsh travel conditions, including extreme heat, limited food supplies, and disease. They also encountered hostile populations and frequent skirmishes. Despite these hardships, their faith sustained them, and many saw their suffering as a form of penance. Chapter 5. The Holy Land as the Destination. 5.1 The Sacred Geography of Jerusalem. Jerusalem held unparalleled significance for Christians as the site of Christ's crucifixion and resurrection. Its capture by Muslim forces was seen as a profound affront to Christendom, making its liberation a matter of both spiritual and political urgency. 5.2 The Symbolism of Reclaiming the Holy Land. The conquest of Jerusalem during the First Crusade in 1099 was celebrated as a miraculous victory. For Crusaders, the city represented the heart of their faith, and its recovery was seen as a divine mandate. The triumph reinforced the idea that their journey was blessed by God. 5.3 Pilgrimage and the Crusader states. Following the success of the First Crusade, the establishment of Crusader states, including the Kingdom of Jerusalem, facilitated continued pilgrimage to the Holy Land. These states provided infrastructure and protection for